So it is our responsibility to try and understand what they're doing, which ones, because not all of them are bad. I mean, like if we look at a chemical like soap, it has been used for eons and it hasn't caused any problems that we know of. So understanding which contaminants are causing harm is really what this study is about. We know that what we know about these contaminants is that they disproportionately affect not just ethnic minorities, but also the poor and rural people. And that's why this study is trying to make sure that if we're going to understand this, we need to include not just the affluent urban people, but also include our rural counterparts as well as ethnic minorities. And the other thing we do know about these chemicals is that they co-occur in the environment. And this is what is really vexing about this whole thing, is that the EPA, we spew one chemical into the environment, the EPA picks it up, tries to test whether it's harmful to humans, and then we spew another one. And the as humans, we're actually accumulating all of those. And there is a whole study, area of study called chemical mixtures, which is really trying to get at this soup of chemicals, because a single chemical, even if it is below those EPA levels, if you add another chemical and another one and another one, at some point, those sub-threshold chemicals end up being really harmful to humans, and we are not able to study them. In fact, the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, that is run by the Centers for Disease Control, is very much concerned about the chemicals we're going to talk about today. And part of the reason is that they have entered our food supply. And the fact that the World Health Organization, together with the CDC, have been trying to document really what is the death toll, and what they're coming up with figures in the 14 million people range that they consider deaths that are directly due to these environmental contaminants. Thank you. Can I have the next one, Andrew? Yeah, so the first one that we're going to talk about briefly is perfluorinated compounds. These are the ones that Suzanne has been talking about. Then the Cape Fear River, now that we have been using them, at least some of these compounds. There's more than 1,000 species that people have come up with now that they have reverse engineered to go and identify what the species are. But they're very valuable for our industries and for our livelihood, because they are chemicals that are important in they're water resistant, they're stain resistant, because they also reduce UV radiation. So they are in many, many places, and it is really difficult to get rid of them. So at the end, they are everywhere. The question is, how can we understand what they're doing, because we seem to have reached levels now where they are they're beginning to be observable, and the numbers of these subspecies are have increased. We know that they are available if you actually go into a home. We find them indoors. They are in our blood supply, and it's in fact our oceans are now recording record levels of these contaminants. So it's really important for us to understand what they're doing, what their molecular fingerprint is, and prepare for the future, because there are solutions to this. There are engineering solutions where we can try and remove some of them. If we really think about what we did with toxic chemicals, and we came up with that when we came up with the charcoal filters, those were intended for toxic metals, and they're doing a wonderful job. So there is hope for this PFAS, but we do need to understand if we should be sinking money into them. And right now, the government doesn't think that it's worth sinking that kind of money into them, or the engineering solutions associated with them. Thanks. Please advance. So this is the map of the Cape Fear River, where this is the largest watershed in North Carolina, and as many of you have seen in the papers and by word of mouth, all the way from Pittsburgh, people are drinking water that is contaminated. And this is 1.5 million out of 10 million North Carolinians that are now exposed to these perfluorinated compounds. Next slide, please. And this is just an example. This is the offending company for right now. But I mean, I would like us to remember that there was the Dan River spillage by Duke Power at some point. Before that, these perfluorinated compounds were reported on the Ohio River, and people in Cincinnati were up in arms. So this is a problem. Having these environmental contaminants means that we cannot pretend they do not exist. We need to face them, study them, understand what they're doing to us, and develop prevention strategies accordingly. Can I have this next slide, please? Oh, this is another example. So when we first discovered the PFAS, the new PFAS called GenX, it was discovered by the Detlef Knapp student who is at NC State. He's an engineer, and he is actually working on trying to find solutions to at least the GenX that we know about. So the reason I included this News and Observer article about the forever chemicals is because I was invited to that meeting when Mr. Reagan came to NC State about a month ago, and we had just received the grant and we do not have solutions. And he's sitting there saying, well, if you tell me, we can provide money for engineering solutions right now, but I cannot authorize that without any data. And when I tried to explain that, well, we are beginning a cohort study, he said, well, you know, until we get the data, it's not going to be as useful. Please advance. So the impacted communities with these perfluorinated compounds are the Wilmington area, where ethnic minorities make up about 18 to 20%, and Fayetteville, where they make up about 40 to 45%. But if you look at the socioeconomic status of the populations that are affected most, it is usually the poor, because at least for some of this, like with not so much the GenX, but a lot of these perfluorinated compounds, you can actually still use a carbon filter, and there are other filtration systems that are possible to use that on the EPA website. Next slide. So the health effects that we already know about these perfluorinated compounds include thyroid disease, and that has been documented, as well as metabolic conditions that include the dyslipidemia. But we also have seen them affect the unborn child, and that you usually see in the form of a lower birth weight. But if you actually start following up on those children, you realize they are born smaller, and then they are catching, the way that they catch up, their trajectory is a whole lot steeper, and they become much more obese by age 5. Can I have the next slide? The other issue that, other than perfluorinated compounds, the other issue that we're going to be studying are toxic metals. We have been studying this since my days at Duke. I was at Duke up until 2014. And then we had started a cohort of pregnant women, about 2,500 of them. And we measured toxic metals in about 310 of them. And what we measured was lead, which we knew was in the community in Durham, since we had known that for about two decades. And cadmium, which we hadn't known at that time. And we didn't quite know what its effects were, because it's so toxic. It's not everywhere the way that lead is. And we also looked at mercury and arsenic. We then looked at the street addresses and enrollment of these people that were that we had measured, the 310 women that we had measured exposure in. And can I have the next? And what we are seeing here is a remarkable map. This is a map of Durham, and these patients came from Duke directly, so most of them were actually Durham people. And what we are seeing on this side, on the left-hand side of the map, you are seeing a map of Durham where cadmium is at the top, mercury, followed by mercury second, lead, and arsenic. And what we are seeing here is the actual distribution of people with elevated levels of each of these metals. And what we are seeing on the right-hand side is the probability that these are really clustered in space, because as we all know, residences are not distributed in equally in geographic space. There's downtown, there's, there are parks, there are schools. But if you actually remove all of that and account for all of that, what we are seeing here is that we have a big cluster of cadmium exposure. And then there is a cluster of mercury, and we have 3 clusters of lead and that of arsenic. Can you please advance? Thank you. And then if you actually, and again, and if you actually look at what that map is showing, is that we have that white circle there is cadmium exposure, and the 3 are lead occurrence. So those people who live in this community here that is circled in white are people who are exposed to cadmium, and those that are circled in black are lead exposure. And there is a population that is exposed to both. And if we actually blow up and find out who these people are, they are contained within major thoroughfares that are 147 and 70 on one side, 85 on the other, in 15501. And again, the Blacks and Hispanics, a lot of them live in this community. This is a community of about 26,000 people, and their income is really low. Next, please. And when we saw these clusters, we then decided, you cannot go and report to a population that you seem like you have high levels without information of where exactly do you think it came from. So we went back and then went back to the same community, collected blood and urine again. We collected hand wipes with the hypothesis that, maybe it's in your house dust and you're consuming some of it. We collected data, we then measured house dust and soils. And what we are seeing here is that these levels in the humans are within levels that are expected, at least for lead, but for cadmium, these levels are a little higher than what is the 0.4 that is recommended by the Environmental Protection Agency. And then the soil levels, they're really, really high. And so, it became clear that this area was contained, and probably there was a spillage at the previous time. So this information is useful for residents as they think about, oh, maybe I need to grow some grass, maybe I need to concrete my driveway where my children play, and things like that. Can you please advance them? And we found nothing in the soil, but when we think about these contaminants, both cadmium and PFAS, we know that for cadmium at least, cigarette smoking is a major source. We know that potassium-containing fertilizers also have cadmium, meaning it's now in our food supply. We also know that both cadmium and PFAS are in the water supply, and Potter's glaze also contains cadmium. Thanks, Henry. The problem, actually, we do know what to do when we are talking about drinking water. We know that we can use filters. A lot of us have some form of filtration system that resembles what we see on the left-hand side. The problem comes when we are actually irrigating our crop, because at that point, all bets are off. There is no other way that there are no fabrics that can be used to contain these contaminants as of now, although the hope is that we can develop such materials because we've done it for arsenic, right? It has been done for arsenic. Then next slide, please. So cadmium itself, it has been associated with multiple diseases already. We know from in vitro models and from in vivo models that we do see higher stimulation of glucose transport. We see that there is decrease in insulin-induced uptake. We know that these diseases that we're talking about, it affects the kidney, it affects the ototoxicity, your ear, your hearing. It would affect hypertension, as well as the brain and some cancers. Can I see next slide, please? So in children, what we have looked at was when a mother is exposed, we have shown that both cadmium and lead are associated with lower birth weight. We know that cadmium, but not lead, are associated with obesity by age 5. We know that lead, but not cadmium, are associated with higher blood pressure in children, what's called prehypertension. We have also, Dr. Muir's colleague has actually measured the liver fat fraction of some of these children, and what she's been able to show is that cadmium, but not lead, is associated with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease in these children. And as you would expect, also with higher levels of triglycerides. But can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, so what we were trying to do, so that was in children, and we're trying to figure out in adults, how do we collect information that can lead us towards the path that says, okay, if we are getting this disease, what is really, if we are getting all these complications in childhood, what diseases do we see? We are suspecting that the liver is what is going to be affected the most. So what we do is go back to that population where we found elevated levels of cadmium in the population, where the population was exposed, and that is zip code 27701. And then we went to the cancer registry of North Carolina in Raleigh and said, okay, can you give us incidence rates for liver cancer? Can you give us incidence rates for liver cancer in these zip codes that surround it? And then we said, okay, let's go out further than where that zip code is, to as far as zip code 27572. And this is the distance away from the site that is highly contaminated. As you can see, this pattern here that we are seeing for liver cancer, where the 27701 has the highest incidence, right? It's much higher than North Carolina, the state. It's much higher than Durham County. But we are not seeing the same thing with prostate cancer. We are not seeing the same thing with multiple other cancers that I didn't put on this slide. So this is one more piece of evidence. And if you look at those that are furthest away from that 27701, the incidence is also lowest there. So this started giving us, it's suggesting that the incidence is 3 times lower in the zip codes that are furthest away from 27701. Beginning to suggest that, you know, what we saw in children maybe is actually going to be around, it will continue throughout the life course. Yes, the next one. So Andrew, do you want to talk about these ones?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think you all have probably heard that you know, we're winning the battle in many cancers, but liver cancer is one in which we're not. It's a rising cause of liver cancer in the United States. Liver cancer, you sometimes hear about cancer that spread to the liver. We're really focused here on cancer that starts in the liver, and that's now the second most common cause of cancer mortality. And what you see on the left side of the figure here is it does vary according to race and gender. And so the y-axis is the rate per 100,000, and the curve there that is Black males is the highest group, and the slope is going up. The next group down is white males, But you see a difference in the black females in blue versus the white females in green. Oh, sorry, that's the photo thing. So we see this variation that plays out. And then if you look over on the right side of the figure, it shows that there have been some nice registries that have been looking at different cancers around the country, and they vary according to the populations about where the people live. And if you look, this is in the 2000s, and again, they're looking at rates per 100,000. And you see that there's the overall rate in the middle there, and the non-Southern registries are higher actually. But then you see that the Southern registries are demonstrating that we're seeing rising rates and approaching the overall rate. And so again, I think Catherine's research, which is so compelling, is trying to get to understand like, so what could be going on in these situations. And so, and we have had a lot of research around this to look at known risk factors, try to understand it, and it's not clear yet. But as you can see, I've been at the hospital today. We are living this every day at our hospital. We are dealing with many cases of liver cancer in our clinics and our hospitals, and it's a real issue in North Carolina. And again, we're delighted to work with Catherine around this research to try to understand why.
Dr. Murr, can I ask a quick question before you move on?
Please.
The slide there, it speaks to the rate of incidence of liver cancer, and speaks to and I recognize what you're saying there. That maybe there's not a explanation for disparities, but I'm wondering about, after diagnosis, do you see the same? I'm thinking about death rates after diagnosis. Does there continue to be a disparity among different race? If you follow what I'm saying,
No, I do.
Yeah.
So we just to orient everybody, we do focus a lot on incidence, mainly because liver cancer doesn't have a great survival. Like all cancers, your likelihood of survival is by whether or not you catch it early. It's not a cancer that there's regular screening for. Most liver cancer comes in patients who have known liver disease. And our biggest challenge in it is that a lot of people don't realize they have liver disease. And so there are times where I meet someone, they've ultimately been diagnosed with liver cancer. I have to explain at some point to them and their family that they probably had liver disease quietly for many years and didn't realize it, and then they've developed it. So many of those patients show up at very late stages and they don't live very long. What we do find is that because of probably access to care issues and other issues about inequities in our care in the United States, that the people of African American and Hispanic heritage often show up with more advanced cancer, therefore their outcomes are not as good. And that is definitely something that plays out for us. I think it's more of an issue around late identification is probably one of the biggest issues there. If we could get better understanding of people where they have liver disease, so that we could get them into care, because what we do know is that when we know people have liver disease and we have them in our clinics and we have a surveillance plan for them, we catch it early when it can be cured. And so that's why the key is for the more we can understand that they have liver disease, so they can be under our care, and then their outcomes can be better. I hope that answers your question.
That does. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Anything you wanted to add in there, Catherine?
No, I was wondering whether maybe there could time to stop and ask other questions, because I think we are close to the end of except for you explaining maybe about what the disease stages are. We probably
How about I share them with this slide, because it speaks a little bit to that, and then we can, I think that's a good natural pause. So I think what this is a little bit what I was talking about just then about how to think about why liver disease develops, and then why liver cancer develops. And so because there's a number of liver conditions that can put somebody at risk for liver cancer, and so we're going to focus here on fatty liver disease, but you could say the same things about if someone has liver disease from alcohol, if they have it from hepatitis C, or if they have it from a number of other conditions. The issue is that all of those conditions that I just mentioned lead people to get fibrosis or scarring in their liver. And it's not everybody. That doesn't happen to everybody. So we focused here on non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which we call NAFLD. And the reason that we're focused on that a lot is because it is also a rising cause of liver disease. We can cure pretty much everybody with hepatitis C, but with between our increased obesity and our increased diabetes, we are seeing more and more of this fatty liver disease. And so what this slide is showing you, that if you take everybody who's overweight or has diabetes, you'll see fat in their liver. Having the fat is not the problem. It's that some of those people, and the rates are telling you they're 25% at 3, 44% at 6 years, will go on to develop fibrosis. And so, why is it that some people are developing fibrosis and why not others? I mean, that's some of the research questions here. And so and that fibrosis develops slowly, and this is not rapid, this is over years. So again, that's why it's quiet. The patients don't feel badly, it's just quietly happening in their liver. And then by the time then some of them actually get to the point of cirrhosis. And just to remind you all, cirrhosis is often in our society, people think that means alcohol. Cirrhosis just means lots of scarring in the liver. Many of my patients have had problems with alcohol. Many of my patients have never touched a drop of alcohol. So cirrhosis is just lots of scarring. And it's in that setting of cirrhosis that the liver is amazingly resilient. If the inflammation can be removed, the liver will do well. So the liver is always trying to heal itself. And in that trying to heal itself, the way I explain it to my patients is sometimes there's a mistake made, and that mistake becomes a cancer. And so that's why, particularly in those patients with cirrhosis, because that liver is trying very, very hard to regenerate, to heal itself, but because that process is not perfect, sometimes they will get a liver cancer. And you see the rates are over there, 1.5 to 3.5% per year, which may not seem high, but when you take it into the thousands and thousands of Americans who have cirrhosis, that's how we're currently inundated with liver cancer. So, do you want me to pause there, Catherine?
Yeah, and just so that we can see whether there are questions.
I will stop sharing for a second. So,
I do have a question.
Yeah.
When I was listening to you and talking about that identifying liver disease or liver problems early is very, very important, and that access to care, as we know, is not equitable. And so your comments about when people of color, Hispanics, any of the people that are considered in the minority come to you, it's generally their later stage morbidity rates, are not good. So my question is, long-winded, sorry, what kind of outreach is there that you all do or in other organizations do to inform people, to get them in to be looked at?
Yeah, so I'm personally part of a couple of things that we're trying to do in Durham County. I'm proud that if, regardless of your insurance status, you can be seen at Duke. So we have a number of initiatives in our federally qualified health center that's Lincoln. We support outreach there. I'm helping them treat all their hepatitis C. Dr. Cindy Moylan, who really would be here today if she wasn't at a meeting. She's Catherine's close colleague, and some of that data Catherine was showing you, she's the generator of that. Cindy's working with them around fatty liver disease to help manage it. Our colleague, Dr. Julius Wilder, works with Duke's CTSA to particularly around diabetes management, because that group has a lot of fatty liver. So we feel pretty good about what we're doing in Durham County. We could always do better, but we feel like we're, at least for the patients who are engaged in the care in Durham County, we're doing better. Across the state, we have figured out pretty quickly that the people across North Carolina cannot make it to the liver centers. And so because we have good, we have outstanding liver center at UNC, Duke. We have one at Atrium in Charlotte. We have some great community practices, but like there are patients in the mountains, there's patients in, you know, Elizabeth City, Morehead City that just cannot get to any of our places. And so we've started this in hepatitis C. I think we hope can expand it into fatty liver in time, but there's a mentoring program where I'm working with primary care clinicians, and so it's me and it's two colleagues at UNC that are doing this. We're working with Health and Human Services at the state through the health departments. And so like they have screening programs for hepatitis C focused particularly, but now they're getting into hepatitis B and they're getting into fatty liver. And so that way, if their primary care person identifies them, and we know those patients are often not going to be able to afford to drive to one of these places. So we are providing these mentoring sessions. I think of it like your college professor's office hours, where I'm just available. My colleagues at UNC are doing that too, and so that they can, those clinicians know that they have at least every week, one of us is available where we give like a mini lecture, and then we are able to talk to them about their cases so we can help manage it. See, that strategy in hepatitis C is working beautifully. We treated hundreds of people around the state this way, people who never would have come. And so we're just getting that into hepatitis B, and then we hope to get that into fatty liver as well as we move forward. I feel like I'm creating a whole bunch of liver doctors around the state through a really strong, but it takes that passionate community health person in their county. You know, I tell you, there's some great pockets around the state that are doing well, but we need to do better. Like there's a wonderful situation in Morehead City right now that there's some really great people working together well, but these are all volunteer clinics or out of their health departments. And so I mainly want you to know we are trying. I wish if we had expanded Medicaid, we'd be totally set to go here. but we're not quite there yet.
I wanted to say, I think Catherine has a program that you can be an ambassador for this study and help spread the word. And so I'm deputizing everybody that heard the word today to at least mention it and share the video so that others can get enrolled. There's a big need.
Yes. Thank you, Suzanne. So with that, shall we wrap up? I just wanted to wrap up why we are asking for you to participate now. We know the problem. Andrew, can we get the slides back?
Yep, I can.
Thank you.
Let's see.
So is the slide before, I think.
Right.
Yes. So what we are saying here is that today is PFAS. Before it was toxic metals. There are a lot of others that we haven't talked about. But what we know is that we do have a problem. We do not have enough data for policy decisions to be made. So, and the specific story about liver cancer is supported by autopsy data. It is supported by animal data. We have looked at zebrafish, we have looked at mice. There's very limited data coming out of the CDC who collect data on adult Americans, and it is supportive. But again, it's very, very limited data. And people who are more exposed, like ethnic minorities, like the poor and rural areas, are not included. And we also have evidence that there are these molecular fingerprints that we could actually try and find so that we can, people can be screened a little earlier. So what we are trying to do now is to try and address those problems by making sure that our study, if we are going to do studies in the future, we include these underrepresented populations, and we really think seriously about measuring more than one contaminant at a time, because they occur in droves. We are all exposed to multiple at a time, and we usually just report on one that we measured. So yeah. Thank you. Can I have the next slide, please? So what we are trying to do to address these data gaps are to look at 45 contaminants, including PFAS and toxic metals, link them to liver diseases that Dr. Muir has been talking about, and liver cancer. This will include 16,000 people across Georgia and North Carolina. We are looking at 39 counties in North Carolina and 29 in Georgia. And then we will identify these marks. Can I have the advance, please? So in this study, the way that the NIH decided they would do this is to do it in 2 phases. The first phase would be this 2-year phase where we are running the study in, for those of you who know about clinical trials, we are trying with the first 2,000, see if we can actually do this and what are the processes that we need to have in place. So our 4 institutions will be recruiting about 500 people each. And then during the last 4 years, we're going to be recruiting everybody else. Please advance. So it's structured in a way where we, because we want to get these answers in a very short space of time, given how urgent the problem is. Under ordinary circumstances, like the cohorts used to start with otherwise healthy people, and you go all the way to the end of when they get disease. But the way that we decided we would do it to get answers quickly is to have a cohort that starts at otherwise healthy, which is what the Rotary Club members would maybe help us find, to where they get fibrosis, and then get another group with fibrosis that will be recruited in clinics. And then those will be followed during the same amount of time to where they either develop or not develop liver cancer. Next slide, please. So the way that so the main 8 criteria are the age that we are looking for people who are between 40 and 75. Again, we said 29 people in Georgia and 39 in North Carolina. And the only exclusions we have are that they have a history of liver disease. Next slide, please. We are recruiting from civic organizations in addition to our academic medical centers that we talked about. So we have academic medical centers, primary care health, and health fairs. We are going to be going to federally qualified health centers. And then we are going to civic organizations such as the Rotary Club, as well as congregations. Yeah, Suzanne. That thing, next slide, please. So what does participation look like? And so if you think this is something worthwhile, or you could either participate just as an individual, or you could participate as an individual and then be an ambassador as well. And what I'm going to talk about now is the individual participation. When you choose to be an ambassador, what you're doing is meeting people and asking them to participate in a snowball type fashion. But in either case, participation will include consenting and allowing us to know that you have agreed to participate in writing, and then having us have access to your medical records, because that's where we're going to get the outcomes that we are looking for, that are low liver disease continuum. And we will ask, we will give you a packet, and the study packet will collect environmental samples that include your house dust, your water, and the wristband. The wristband is really a wearable that collects ambient pollution that you may be breathing. So we are trying to get it, the dust, the water, and then the wristband. And then to try and get it what the source is, we're also going to have a dietary questionnaire. And this will be also supported by a standard risk factor questionnaire using questions that the Centers for Disease Control has in their bank. And then we will collect samples, and these samples will include blood, urine, and saliva. For us in the community right now, we are collecting urine and saliva, but we are not collecting blood in most people, in part because we are trying to keep the social distance until the COVID pandemic is behind us. And and until at least the spike is behind us. So the idea is to repeat this every 2 years because we do want to understand the behavior of these chemicals. Are there some that you would find very high levels and then maybe you know about those levels, you change behavior, and then the levels reduce? That's what we are trying to understand because we want to share this information with everybody. Next slide, please. I think there is one more, right? Yeah, that's it. So this is the information about if you would like to volunteer to either be the ambassador who will go and help us recruit people. There is limited remuneration for it, and then there is the part where you are actually the participant. And the information is available, additional information at these links here. So with that, I will stop and see if you have additional questions.
Can you add those links to the chat?
Yes, I can.
Thank you, Andrew.
Is there any idea toward advocacy about shaping policies around some of these pollutions, particularly?
I think the problem has been that we do not have data. You know, when we started talking about physical activity and putting walkways in people's communities, that we had data. The problem with this is that there really isn't much data to go with, and the majority of what we have is in animal models. That's why we are buckling down to collect this data, so that I'm thinking that within 2-3 years, we will be generating this data. The data you're talking about that really will speak to advocacy. At that point, I think it will be appropriate, because it's very difficult when to disentangle these things, because now you have people who are exposed tend to be poorer. They tend to also have a poorer diet, and disentangling that poorer diet and other choices made from these contaminants, it is distracting, and it's very easy for somebody who doesn't want to help to easily say, well, how do you know, right? And you could try and do this in animal models, and how big a farm would you need if you are releasing 3,000, 2,000 new chemicals a year? You need a whole farm of animals that you're feeding these contaminants and then killing them. And then, I mean, it's just not, it's not a doable thing. The only way to do it that we thought of was let's just collect this data, and the way that we overlay these cohorts will allow us to get answers a little faster for advocacy.
Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Rod.
Well, just Suzanne, real quick. I know that we're out of time, but I wanted to say, obviously, our Rotary Club in particular is very interested in the social inequities that exist, and you made a lot of compelling statements around how different communities of race have been disproportionately affected. And earlier in your talk, Dr. Hoy, you mentioned that the poor are most usually impacted by contaminants because they can't afford filtration systems. My question really is, I'd love for us to figure out a way to continue the dialogue around this so that we can, or I maybe should ask you, I know you're busy, but is there an opportunity for us to go further in the conversation to really understand more of the dynamics there?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Actually, as part of the work we do in the Center for Human Health and the Environment, we do exactly that, the outreach, and we would be very happy to do that. Yes.
Wonderful.
And for those that, even if they're members of the Rotary Club that are participating, every so often as we generate data, we will be releasing it as aggregate data these are the contaminants that are in Raleigh, and that information will be shared. Yes.
Thank you very
I
much.
don't know how we're going to do it in real time. Whether we should reach out to you next.
We'll talk further around, sure, but thank you for that opportunity. I'm
Yes,
anxious for
absolutely.
that. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you being here and sharing with us the information from your study and ongoing and the opportunities perhaps down the road. So we thank you for that. Thank you. And Rachel, I believe one of your colleagues was on the call, and Andrew, we thank you all for being here and the research that you're doing, and go Wolfpack.
Yes, thank you. I don't know what Andrew feels about that.
I will try to get.
I'm a Duke alum. I'm a Duke alum married to a Tar Heel, so I try to be as all. And I've got 3 kids who've got to go to college here in the next few years, so I'm for everybody. So
Thank you, Rachel, for putting the sign up information in the chat. If anybody wants to copy that down, and we'll try to send it out.
great.
Thank you so very much for giving us the opportunity to do this. It's a privilege. Thank you.
Well, as you can see, we have a certificate of appreciation for you, Catherine. We will also create one and email it to Andrew for his participation. But this is great that you all can come to us and inform us and how we can help. So we appreciate this, and I will get this emailed to you, and then also I will email one to you, Andrew. So thank you so much.
You're very kind. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think, Carol, if you want to, there we go. I think, does anyone that's on the call have announcements? No. So we'll go to
I was just wanting to say, don't forget the district conference that's coming up. Please try to sign up for that. I know maybe the specials might be coming back. That will be May 13th and 14th. It is going to be in Winston-Salem. So mark your calendars for that.
Yes, and so we had a little chat about that prior to the start of the meeting. And so, yes, we're hoping we'll have to just see if it just the district assembly is going to end up being on Zoom or what. But yes, so I am signed up for both, and I encourage all of us to sign up for those, the assembly and the district conference. You have an opportunity to meet others around the district. And you often at the district conference in particular, we have some great speakers from around the country. And so it's really well done and a lot of great information. So I encourage you to do that. Our next meeting will be February 11th. And
Right.
that's all right.
There we go.
There we go. And it'll be Cheryl Tung, who serves as president for the League of Women Voters, Wake County. She's going to speak to us about redistricting and the impact of gerrymandering in North Carolina, which has all been in the news lately. So we're looking forward to that. And with that, again, thank you to Catherine and Andrew for being with us today, Laura as well, or excuse me, Rachel as well, and to all of our members and affiliate members. So Carol, you want to lead us out with the 4-way test?
Absolutely. The 4-way test, the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth?
Truth.
Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Great. Thank you all. Have a great week, and we will see you on February 11th.
And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
guys.
Thank you again, Dr. Hoyo. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Suzanne, sorry.
Pretty good program, I think. Very
So
interesting.
too, very interesting. And I have run into a glitch on time-wise, so I do not have all your programs yet up. I had planned to do it all on Wednesday.
That's
and
okay.
didn't
It's
happen,
a lot.
But
I
we're getting
have
there.
another one to add that I've got to do, but I didn't want to overload you.
Well, that's great. When you get it all together, send it on and I'll get it in the
Oh,
appropriate.
well, I'm excited about it. It's speaker from NC State who they have a special program for community colleges that are affiliated there. There's about 15 in North Carolina that they can transfer in. And
Right.
a lot of times it's the students that aren't aware of how easy or they need guidance. And we had her speak at the Carrie Page and it was so wonderful. I had no idea about it. And they go begging because people don't know about it. So she's also a real success story. One of the students is going to come too. So I think it's going to be really great.
Well, I'm familiar with the transfer program because I worked in the for the Associate Dean of Engineering at State.
Yeah, I think it's C3 is the name of the program. Is that right? C3, like that.
I
Is
don't
it-
know. It's been so long
Yeah.
ago since I've been there but yeah, so that is really important to
Yeah,
have those links.
It's good.
Thanks, Suzanne. Have a good
Thank
week.
y'all.
We
You too.
will.
Bye, Carol.
Sure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so my what I wanted to there we go. What I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is, you know, we had a great session. We identified the strategies. Rod put it kind of all together and sent it out to the participants, and
Right.
then said, okay, so the things that are bolded, we'll go ahead and the board will be involved in what the next steps are. So my thought is I will be happy to participate, and I'm sure we can get, you know, good participation from the board, which includes the the team leaders.
Mhm.
So it would be Chris and you and me and Jackie and Suzanne, Teresa, Veronica, and I'm forgetting somebody. Maybe not, maybe I did twice. But anyway, but my question is, this I think is really going to be setting the tone for going forward, like in your year.
Right, yeah.
And so like I said, I'll be happy to participate, but I'm not sure that it doesn't make sense for you to lead this.
Mhm.
Your thoughts? Well, I tell you what.
I guess I'm not quite sure what really our next step is. I mean, we kind of, you know, I'm looking at the strategies, you know, when we came up with some things.
Well, I think what we would be doing is, for example, oh dear, that doesn't sound good.
Oh, it's just sinus. Yeah.
Okay, good. Good.
Perennial.
Is to one of the strategies for goal one. Okay, goal one was we will bring our diverse club members closer together through sharing, working together, spending time together socially. Through our interactions, we will strive to grow as individuals and exemplify an equitable community. And so under that is they said, okay, we're going to schedule social time after each meeting, maybe extend the meeting, whatever. So that was something that we talked about doing. I think we have some of that in the beginning, but we don't have it at the end.
Right, yeah.
And I think it's something for the board to think about, because I think we have to be sensitive to people's time.
Mhm.
I mean, but that's something. Schedule the impact activity for the quarter, plan a quarter at a time. So Suzanne and I are working on some of this, but I think for next year, we probably need to look at how we're going to incorporate these things into next year. And that's where I believe that you take the lead.
Right. Yeah. So I guess, yeah, really looking ahead to next year. You know, thinking about programs. I guess, you know, the team. What do you think about the team approach? Has it worked? Are you happy with the way it's worked out?
Well, it's not. And that was kind of what happened when I ended up being hospitalized.
Yeah.
And things were not quite, you know, yeah. And so Teresa did a great job. Melissa, you know, and this is between us, I hope. Teresa did a great job. And I think honestly, it led to her burnout. And then Melissa came along, and bless her heart, she's like herding a cat. But eventually we were able to get you know, some good programs. So that, and then when so Veronica was supposed to follow next, and Veronica said, hey folks, I got a lot. I didn't realize I was going to have so much as a, you know, working towards the DG position.
Yeah.
And so that's when, and Suzanne was going to follow her. And the next thing was I ended up in the hospital, and I think Marie and Rod kind of took charge and said, okay, let's see what we can do about putting some meat around this. And that's when we really don't have teams working at this point. We have Suzanne doing programs, and you've been doing the slide presentation, which I had been doing, you know, last year, and then this year before you took over. And so, and I think also, I hate to say it, but I just don't think we've got the mass to effectively function as teams. I think we've got 3 great members that are actual members of our club, and that's Teresa Black, Judy All, and Sue Kaufman. And I think we need to engage them all. And so so that's another thing about how we go about doing that, making sure that they're engaged and they're part of it. Susan, which she goes by Sue, was here. Jackie wasn't, and I know she's dealing with issues with her son.
Right. Yeah.
And I need to just touch base again with her to see how she's doing. And then and Teresa wasn't here. So yeah. So I just need to do some reaching out to touch a couple of people we've not seen. I need to check in on Chris, see how she's doing as well. So but I think we've got a great core, and I think we've got some really, really good programs, and people are motivated. Suzanne knows so many people, and the opportunity to it's great. I don't have that kind of a reach. I've been sequestered for like so many years now. But yeah, and so Rod and Charlie, I think we've got some really good folks that are affiliate members. I'm going to be talking to Ed and to Rose to officially ask them to become affiliate members. And you know, kind of explain how that works.
Right. Yeah.
And because I think their input is good. And Ed's wife, Margie, is
okay. I'll remember. She was here.
Is not a routine. She's attended meetings, so that's another person that I'll be talking with when I talk with Ed as well. So
Well,
I've not been as productive as I, would like to be. I have a paper explosion on my desk, and there's just so many things that are ongoing, and I'm really looking forward to July 1. I'm hoping that my life will kind of settle down. But a lot of things going, leadership type things, which I don't have to tell you. You're an ADG and also, yeah. When does your 2-year finish?
what, for AG?
Uh-huh.
Well, I told Nathan that I'd do it again next year, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This was my, I
Oop,
told
you're-
them that, if they needed me, I'd be glad to stay another year. So,
And
so
if you
this
offer,
year, but I
they
said,
accept. Yep.
so
So,
I'll over this next year, I'll start looking around in my area clubs to see if I can't find somebody to step into that position, so that when Veronica takes over, I can say, I mean, I don't mind doing it. I enjoy doing it, and it's really not that much of a work,
I remember. I was one a long time ago. I was one for Tim Mannix. So that's a long time ago.
That's a ways. Yeah. Before my time.
Yeah. So, well, I've been a Rotarian since 2001. So,
Okay. Well, I've been a Rotarian since 2000, but see, I just moved here from Alabama in
okay.
2016.
Okay.
So my
All right.
experience in this district is only in the past 5 years. So.
Well, yeah, but as a Rotarian, you bring your experience from your other things. And I think I've only been a Rotarian here. So I value people who have been Rotarians in other places and what they can bring in terms of, another perspective. So anyway, all right. So
mostly my concern next year then is about programs, because programs, I mean, I can do a lot of the bookkeeping and, backroom stuff, but programs I just cannot do.
And I understand. I was the sole person doing programs for the first couple of years. So I definitely understand. And I think Suzanne done a really good job of bringing some interesting programs. She might be interested to do it if you think if she's somebody that you think she's what she cannot do, or what she just is not able to do, is put the programs and the material up on DACDB and Facebook, because she doesn't have the capability. I think she has mostly her iPad or a cell phone.
Right.
But she's been good about getting programs, and it doesn't mean that there couldn't be somebody else that could work on programs as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let me talk, I'll talk with Suzanne then, and think about who else might want to work with her. I'm not so much worried about, like I say, that backroom stuff. I can find people to do, or I can do it myself in terms of keeping things updated, as long as we have good programs. So, all right. Yeah, so I need to start thinking about that going forward, I guess.
Well, take a look at these the goals, that we've agreed to, and the strategies that are kind of bolded, because those are the ones that kind of stuck out how we're going to do it, and then we could have a work session for the rest of this year, moving forward, and have a work session with the board to see if we can tag some names with these strategies we said that we were going to do.
Yeah, I like that idea. Let me see, our next board meeting is scheduled, I guess, for next.
It'd be the 11th.
Would be our next meeting. So either then or, in March, really think about doing more of a working session with the board to flesh out some of these pieces.
And then you can look at caring for. Now, probably what if we wait till March and then we give people a sign March. So we have April, May, and June. That's kind of 3 months, but it could give a head start to then the following year.
Right. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I'll go ahead and get this document together, and I'll put it out to the board. And what we want to do is discuss next steps and putting names together and how we're going to tackle this. And because we're not going to be able to decide everything or get everything moving. But if we can plan to have everything moving by March, where we'll have time to talk to the people whose names were put towards this.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds great.
Okay.
And I will you give some thoughts. If you have any thoughts, shoot my way, and we'll go from there.
Okay. And I'll do Andrew's certificate and I'll email that to you so you'll have both of them.
Okay. That'd be yeah. That would be great. That would be great. And so you've got his full name and.
I just copied it off the screen. So.
Okay, great. And he's an MD as well, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. That sounds great. Appreciate it.
All right.
All right. Thanks so much.
You bet. Take care. We'll see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.